Oh, hello there. Hey there, G3XE here, and I am doing a bit of a response video today. I'll move this to the side. This is my centerpiece model for my Lizardman army for Age of Sigmar. This response video is to a video that J. Scott Garibay had posted entitled The Elements of the Next Modern RPG. And Scott was kind enough to watch one of my videos and do a video response, so I thought I would return in kind. Got my coffee there. So, get my notes. In his video, which link is down below, he lists out 4 different elements for the next modern RPG. And kind of where he thinks the industry will go. I totally agree with the video. It's really awesome. I won't go over it word for word on this one, but definitely check it out. I'm going to talk about one of the 4 pillars that he kind of lays out. And it's the only one I really feel like I can contribute at all meaningfully to. And it is combat. And as you can see, I come from a wargaming background. And it's interesting when you look at D&D, from a wargame perspective, it's like a role-playing game with a strange pseudo-wargame tacked onto it. And from wargaming standards, it is a very clunky wargame. Takes way too long to deal with combats. Some parts are ultra-realistic, while others are very, very abstract. And everything in between. That being said, in Scott's video, which thanks so much for responding to my other video, Scott, and he lists out in his in the combat pillar that the next modern RPG combat should be 10 minutes or less and really quick to resolve. Now, he also said something about a beginning phase and an end phase to the combat. I don't know how that would work. Like, I wasn't able to kind of work around that, so this may not go 100% of the way, but these are my thoughts, because like any, I think, wargamer who goes into D&D, they're going to have some ideas about, oh, you could really clean up this rule system when it comes to combat. Now, ironically, I'm not going to make it more of a wargame with these ideas. It's just cleaning up the number of rolls and stats and everything you need. The other thing is that I don't think this would be implemented by D&D. A lot of the things that I'm going to be in my ideas, you know, my crazy big sky ideas, are going to get rid of some of the things that D&D has had since its very first iteration. Because of the legacy of D&D, it's not going to get rid of very, like, iconic terms within itself anytime soon. It's always going to have that nostalgia factor. So this would be a different RPG than these ideas. But because D&D is the common, common denominator in the RPG industry, everyone knows, I thought this is a good starting place to talk about it. Alright, so I'm going to list a number of things that I believe would get D&D combat to that 10-minute or less and very easily understood goal. Alright, so which should we start out with? Well, let's start out with the main thing, which is one roll rounds. Okay, each round, every player or combatant does one roll. That's all. It is a waste in my mind that you have to, for every combat, do initiative. Everyone rolls to hit, and then almost always you get what I heard someone in a Warhammer 40,000 game describe as a slapping contest, because I roll, and, oh, I don't hit your armor class. Okay, you roll, you don't hit mine. And so we're just sitting there missing each other, or blocking each other, or whatever. It's very abstract, with nothing much really happening. We're rolling and rolling and rolling. And that happened in my Warhammer game because both of our warlords had all this defensive war gear and really good armor, but no good really melee attack weapons, and so when they got up into combat and were fighting each other, we just kept rolling damage, but then we would just save it with our armor, and so they never killed each other, no damage, you know, it was like the whole game. And so D&D often boils down into these kind of slapping contests. So one roll rounds, how would they work? Well, start by, and I know, like, buckle in, no initiative, okay? No hit points, alright? No damage rolls, and drastically change what armor class is. How would those work? Well, first rule, there are no more attack rolls, damage rolls. I think that there should be 3 skills: melee combat skill, range combat skill, and spell combat skill. And those go in your abilities just like every other thing. If the other 2 pillars of play are defined by your stats in the left-hand portion of the player's or of the character sheet, why should combat take up like 80% of the page with this whole mess about weapons, attacks, and armor class, and saves, and passive perception? I think those skills, right, would contribute to, you would pick one. At the top of, or at each round, every combatant declares who and how they're attacking. Every combatant who is alive at the beginning of the round gets to deal their attack. So there's no initiative. Everyone deals it simultaneously. Oh, and I would also get rid of hit points. Okay, so bear with me here. Everyone rolls a d20 and adds whatever skill, combat skill that they're using. Now, let's say player A is attacking Goblin B, and they're both attacking each other. No other things going on, right? He rolls, adds his bonus. Goblin rolls, add their bonus. The difference is dealt in damage to the lower of the 2 values. So there's no more, I hit you, no, I don't hit you. Do I hit you? No, I don't hit you. It is one way or another, there's going to be a winner in this round between these 2 combatants. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. If I roll and add up my thing and I get a 19, and then the Goblin rolls and adds his thing and it gets a 12 total, then what difference is that? 7? I would win by 7, so I deal 7 damage to the Goblin. Then you also add in the damage for a weapon, to that 9, or 7, excuse me. So all weapons have a static damage value. It never makes sense to me why a sword at one point could do 1 damage and another point could do 6 damage, and it's the same sword, and the difference in damage would more likely have to do with the defense of the opponent rather than the actual sword itself. So rolling high will always be rewarded because the difference will be higher, and then your damage hence will then be higher. So just barely making it 1 point or so above the enemy is just a slight blow, right? Armor always, instead of having armor class to hit, it just negates a certain amount of damage. So if doing 7 damage to that Goblin, plus, let's say, 3 for my sword, let's say the sword has a static damage of 3. So that's a total of 10 damage. Let's say the Goblin's wearing armor 2. That subtracts 2 from that damage roll, so it only takes 8. Right? Alright, you do that for every combatant. Every combatant compares their number to the number of the thing they're attacking. And the thing that they're attacking compares its number to whatever it's attacking, so it doesn't matter who you're attacking. Everyone deals their thing. Alright? At the end of the combat, the DM rolls what's called a break test for all of the enemies. All of the monsters or whatever, goblins. Things don't have a hit point total anymore because that's also arbitrary. Like, if you're going to have hit points, you should have decreasing stats as they get more and more wounded, but that's so complex. Like, that goes more toward war game style. We want to keep things quick and easy. So a break test, right? So let's say goblins have a break of 20. That means after every round where a monster takes damage, the DM rolls a d20 for that monster and adds the damage. If it meets or exceeds that monster's break value, they break. Either they are wounded and surrender, they die, or they flee. Now this gives the DM far more ability. Like, it doesn't handhold DMs to say, okay, well, if the math says this, it does this. It says, look, tell the best narrative you can from the math that's presented to you. If the goblins if this goblin breaks after 1 hit, he's probably fleeing. If he took a bunch of hits, maybe he just dies. You know, like, it gives DMs way more, it treats them as adults, right? The rules don't have, like, super in-depth, second-by-second descriptions of trying to pick a lock, it assumes the DM can describe, oh, well, this lock is a rusty iron bolt that you can easily pick. It assumes DMs can describe that. It doesn't handhold them with that check, with that sleight of hand check. So why would you handhold the DMs in the combat and say, okay, no, we don't trust the DM to describe a cool combat. We're going to have play-by-play every second. Okay, this blow does this. This blow does this. No, I think combat should be more abstract, and it should be up to the players. I also think you should add in the ability for DMs to give bonuses. Like, written into the rules, DMs can give bonuses for players doing interesting tactics or situational bonuses. So if a player is a clever role player and says, you know what, I want to sneak up behind this ogre while my other friends are doing this, and when I attack him, I want to stab him right in the chink in his armor, then you can give bonuses to his roll for that thing. Situational bonuses. Again, leaves it up to the DM, because DM discretion, they leave DM discretion up in the social and exploration pillars of the game for so much. Why would we handhold the DM in the combat phase? So this is, again, elements that are kind of from war games, but it makes the game more like a role-playing game. I would also add in an ability bank. So I'm going to bring up another prop here, the Monster Manual. Now, I love this book, but tell me here, I'm going to pull up what I think is the worst offender, or one of the worst offenders. The Monster Manual has all this really, really cool information about monsters, origins, and where they can be found, and what their nature is like, and all that, right? But then they also have this huge text box for all the stats and abilities. And this is the most boring, blandest thing you've ever seen, and it takes away room that we could have had this. This inspires me to roleplay. This does not, right? If this was a break value, a combat plus, and then a bunch of abilities in an ability bank, then it would be far shorter. Now, what I mean by ability bank is, like in Warhammer 40,000, for example, a character will just have an ability. It will just say, really short and sweet, feel no pain. In the back of the rule book is an index of all those abilities, right? I think that you don't have to spell out each ability for each thing. All ghosts should have an ability called Ethereal, and it does all the same thing. All dragons should have an ability called Focused Breath or something. And, you know, like, there are so many wasted paragraphs in here of describing a similar ability, but for each monster. Let me see if I can show you what I mean. So I'm going to read 2 paragraphs here, and tell me which one inspires you to DM more. A wraith is malice incarnate, concentrated into an incorporeal form that seeks to quench all life. The creature is suffused with negative energy, and its mere passage through the world leaves nearby plants blackened and withered. Animals flee from its presence. Even small fires can be extinguished by the sucking oblivion of the wraith's horrifying existence. Alright, that's paragraph 1. Here's paragraph 2. Life Drain. Melee weapon attack plus 6 to hit. Reach 5 feet. 1 creature. Hit 21, parentheses, 4d8 plus 3 necrotic damage. The target must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw, or its hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the damage taken. This reduction lasts until the target finishes a long rest. The target dies if this effect reduces its hit point maximum to 0. So, I kind of gave that voices for effect, but you get my meaning that all of that latter paragraph, could be summed up in the index for all ghost-like creatures under an ability called Ghost or Ethereal or something. Almost like keywords, right? And then you would have so much more space for the cooler description that actually inspires me to DM this thing. So I don't need the Monster Man to explain out to me each individual little, okay, then you roll for Constitution, saving throw, and whatever. That's the weird wargame elements kind of creeping into this role-playing game. I can roleplay that monster if all I do, like, if I roll exceptionally high for it, I can just DM on the fly what that would mean, right? If it suddenly does 15 points of damage to a player character, I can describe it sucking its soul out of it, and the player is forced into a, eye-to-eye glare with the Wraith, unable to move his or her head as he whispers to him in a scream that only the player can hear, and it's both quiet and excruciatingly loud all at once, and the world around him fades into blackness as he feels like his breath is being driven from his body. Something cool like that, right? I don't need an ability called Life Drain that's like, okay, he's going to use his Life Drain ability. Now, this does 5 necrotic damage, okay? It does, like, so abstract. That's very, very abstract. So, this is my long-winded video, and if I seem all worked up, that's just because I'm 2 cups of coffee in and am very excited. So, to recap, an ability bank with keywords, 1 roll combat rounds. It doesn't have to be the way I described it. That was just an idea. This is all just spitballing. But I really think J. Scott Garibay is onto something when he says 10-minute combats. It's very, very important. Everything else in the game you can do in 10 minutes, like every other pillar. Why should combat be different? All right, and I think that I even think that monsters should have breaking checks to find their breaking point, right? And it doesn't have to. We don't have to specify that when they're reduced to 0 hit points, they go unconscious or whatever. Like, leave that to the DM. Just have a simple D20 roll that says, okay, do they break yet? And the more damage they take, the more likely they are to break, right? And if they've reached their breaking point, and that can be used for to represent anything. A breaking point could be simply like you're dueling with someone, and he's like, I yield, you know? It could be, it could even just be a dragon shuddering and trying to kick its legs as it spasms in its death throes, you know? Like, breaking checks, leave that up to the DM. We don't have to know exactly, like, what saving roll he failed that allowed him to take 12 points of damage that did the killing blow. All of that is abstract, and it's a role-playing game, so we want to get less, to a certain extent, the less abstract, the better. Thanks so much, Scott, for responding to my video. I hope this is along the same vein as yours, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.